And we're going to talk with Aaron Torres from the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast, also from Fox Sports Radio and Aaron Torres Media here in the first week of college basketball season. And, of course, the first thing we're going to bring up with AT is UConn football. Right, that's right, UConn football, because AT is, if you've listened to him and listened to this show for a while, you know Aaron is an alumnus of the University of Connecticut. And I mean, AT, it's safe to say, I mean, it's a bit of a splash. That's a name that they hired there in Jim Mora, former NFL and UCLA head coach. And look, I mean, to me, it feels like a pretty good match of a football program that is trying to start over, and a coach that's trying to restart that college head coaching career.
Well, Phil, yeah, no, man, I appreciate you asking. I'm really excited, man, and it's interesting. You know, I've made the argument for a while. UConn is not. I mean, I heard when Randy Edsall, quote unquote, retired, and he didn't really retire; he got forced out. You know, I heard this. It's the worst job in FBS football. They need to drop down to FCS level, and that's just simply not true. I mean, you guys know, being the only prominent Power 5 state school in Arkansas, what being a state school in a major state is. And UConn's a state school. The athletic department obviously has a history of success. It's well funded, and it has its limitations. But I also think that the independent schedule has worked to their benefit in that they get some real teams to come into Rensselaer Field where they play their home games. I mean, Purdue played there this year, and Purdue's obviously a top 25 team right now. They play NC State at home next year. And so I never thought that it was an Arkansas-level job, an LSU, a USC, a Florida, whatever. But I never thought it was Akron or whatever, fill in the blank. You can figure out, Western Kentucky, whatever. And so I'm excited. And what I would also say, Phil, is now living in Los Angeles, I mean, I heard from a couple former players that all swear by the guy. And I was surprised, even my friends who are UCLA fans kind of said, dude, I think he's going to do pretty well there. And kind of were more praiseworthy. I mean, you guys know how it goes. When you fire a coach, it's always the coach's fault. There's never any underlying factors. So to hear from UCLA fans that even said, look, he recruited well, he won a lot of games early, it went sideways late, there were injuries, I'm really excited. And the last thought, and Arkansas basketball fans know this better than anybody, in the transfer portal world, you can flip a program pretty quick. And so UConn fans are realistic. Nobody thinks they're going 10-1 or 11-1 and playing for a playoff. But I do think that, they can go 6-6 and get to a bowl game. I was on air in College Station yesterday, and I said this, Phil, and it stands true. There will never be a fan base more happy to go to Shreveport for the Independence Bowl on New Year's Eve than UConn if we could just get to 6-6 here over these next few years. So, obviously, you can probably hear it in my voice. I'm pretty excited about everything that went down yesterday.
That's true, because in Arkansas, it'd be like, Shreveport, come on, man, it's so close.
That's what I'm saying.
So you mentioned Arkansas basketball. Let's get into that, and then we'll have some other basketball stuff to talk about. I don't know if you looked at the box score, if you might have watched Arkansas victory over Mercer, but some things stand out. One, trailed at halftime, but there's been a little bit of a history of slow starts for Arkansas against mid-major teams, whether it's been in non-conference regular season or during the NCAA tournament, and they came back and won by 13 against a team that I think was pretty good. But what really jumps out, and we've talked about this quite a bit in the last few days, JD Notae takes 26 shots. I'm going to just ignore for a moment that he scored 30. 26 shots in 39 minutes. Davonte Davis played nearly 34 minutes, did not shoot the ball once. It feels like you got to find a happy medium between the two of them.
Mm-hmm. Well, and this is a lot of what we talked about last week on the show is I just think a lot of these programs, I mean, the ones that looked really good on Tuesday, for the most part, now Duke has a bunch of new guys, they looked really good, but Kansas basically returns their whole team. Tennessee returns a ton of guys, they looked good. Alabama had some turnover, obviously they lose Herbert Jones, but their two leading scorers, Shackelford and Javon Quinterly, are back. And so I only bring that up to say, for a school like Arkansas, it's going to take time. And I keep going back to what we saw last year with this team. I mean, Phil, you'd have to fill me in. Drew, fill me in. I don't remember Davonte Davis playing big minutes in the opener. Jalen Wood, maybe in the opener. Because
they were barely even in rotation in November. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. And by the end of the year, we know how important those two guys were. And so I think this is a learning process like it is for every program, but especially for a program like Arkansas that has so many new guys. And then obviously even the guys that they have, Davonte Davis and Jalen Williams, while they were playing big minutes last year at the end of the season, they're jumping into new roles this year. And so it's going to be a learning process. Looking at the Arkansas schedule, it seems as though it's built pretty nice where you can pick up some wins early and kind of learn about yourself before SEC play. But there's a lot of teams in college basketball that are going through stuff like that right now.
Aaron, earlier this week, you released your full predictions, your Final Four, your national championship winner, national player of the year. And you, along with so many other people, I know you briefly mentioned Kansas. You have Kansas over Texas. What puts Kansas above and beyond everybody else that they seem to be, kind of the sexy go-to pick this year to win it all?
Interesting. I hadn't necessarily seen that. I mean, I don't honestly value anyone else's opinion other than my own because my opinion is the best. But no, I saw a lot of Gonzaga. I'm a little lower on Gonzaga than most people. They're actually going to be in Vegas over Thanksgiving. I'll get to see them in person. But I saw a lot of Gonzaga. UCLA returns a lot. With Kansas, it's a few things. I mean, I think one, it's that continuity that I just talked about a minute ago. 4 starters back off last year's team that they struggled in the middle of the year, but they still finished second in the Big 12 behind Baylor that won the championship. But the other thing is, historically, if you look at Bill Self, his best teams generally, he's not a one-and-done coach. And I think, even going back to the other game Tuesday night, we poke at Coach K and make fun of him, and he's kind of annoying. But, for him to have a roster with 2 freshmen playing as well as they did, as locked in as they were on both ends of the court, because I thought defensively is where they won that game, it's hard to get young players to play at that level, and some coaches are really good at it and some aren't. I remember, I'll tell you guys a great story. I had the whole Villanova fan base mad at me, well, twice in the last couple of years, but 2 years ago or 3 years ago when Javon Quinterly, who's now at Alabama, when he was at Villanova, it was a big topic. Why is he not playing? And I said, I would never send my son to Villanova if he was going to be a one and done. And, Villanova fans got mad. What are you saying? We shouldn't play the best players? And I said, no, but, there's that fine balance. And a guy like Calipari, a guy like, I think, Eric Musselman last year with Moses Moody, a guy like Coach K for sure, they understand that when you have those young, talented players, you might only have them for 6 months, and you got to figure out a way to make it work. And there are other coaches like Jay Wright, who's playing at UCLA tonight. I'll see him a little bit later this evening. And like Bill Self, that they just don't do well with those younger guys throwing them into the fire. And so for me with Kansas, this is a veteran team. Even the new players are basically 4th, 5th-year transfers. And these are the teams that Bill Self has had a ton of success with. And so 4 starters back. Obviously, Ochai Agbaji, we saw how good he was on Tuesday night. I just Bill Self, I poke at a lot because, I think he's gotten away with some stuff the last few years and nobody really calls him out on it. But he's a great X's and O's guy, and he always does better with the older veteran teams as opposed to, say, the years that he's had in Andrew Wiggins or Kelly Oubre, guys like that.
AT, I'm going to ask you the earliest installment of this question that you will ever get into a season. After one game.
I don't know about Hogs baseball yet. I don't know about Hogs baseball.
Not that. You have one game to go off from everybody pretty much played.
Sure.
Give me the most overrated and underrated team after one game.
The most overrated and underrated teams after... Well, I think the overrated is easy, and I am guilty of this as well. The most overrated is Virginia, who got spanked by Navy. David Robinson ain't walking through that door for Navy, and it's really interesting, and I was guilty of this too, is, everybody puts together their kind of preseason top 25 and their power rankings and all that stuff, and there was really nothing on that Virginia roster that made you say, this is a top-flight team, but they have such a history. I mean, they won the ACC last year. We forget it because it was a weird... They won the ACC last year, the year before they win the national championship, the year before they were number 1 seed, and they never look good on paper, but this year they especially didn't look good on paper. They lost a guy early to the NBA that they weren't expecting. They lose a couple other guys. They lose a couple guys to transfer that are kind of developmental pieces. And so, you lose to Navy, that doesn't project out well for the start of the season. So they, to me, I would say were probably the most overrated. I think they'll probably be properly rated until they prove otherwise. Underrated, it's probably unfair, and maybe I just haven't seen enough teams, and maybe I'll have a better answer to this in a week, Drew. I think Duke's ceiling's a lot higher than I thought they would be because I thought the guard play, and I thought the defense specifically was a lot better than I thought it would be and a lot more advanced than it would be. And so a couple things. I mean, you win in March with guards, and you win in March with obviously really, really good players. I think Duke has the number 1 overall pick in Paolo Banchero. That's been my stance going forward. But I didn't think Trevor Keels was going to be that good. And so, I know that's a kind of a cop-out answer, but I thought they were somewhere between probably the 10th to 18th best team in the country and probably losing the Sweet 16 Elite 8. But the way that they were locked in on the defensive end, I think their ceiling is much, much higher than I had anticipated originally.
Last thing to get with here, Aaron, and this was, I think it was late last week that the NCAA upheld the postseason ban for Oklahoma State basketball. And this does, this is from the Adidas scandal, if I remember correctly. Does this, with this coming down and it now being final, I mean, there's going to be no more appeals, anything like that. Do you think this reverberates to other programs that also were implicated in this, say Auburn, for instance?
Well, what's really interesting, Phil, is a couple things. Is one, coming out of that scandal, they created this, I always forget what it's called, the IARP, or I call it the AARP because I can never remember, but there's an I in there somewhere.
AIRP or something like that, yeah.
Yeah, well, whatever. We get the point. It's for basketball, old people, I don't really know. It's whatever. It's independent of the NCAA, and basically all of these schools saw what the NCAA did to Oklahoma State and said, well, hey, we're going to go with those guys because it might be worse, but we don't know, and it might be better. And so with Kansas, with LSU, with Auburn, all of those schools, I tend to think that, in my opinion, it's so hard to know right now because they have this independent panel that still hasn't ruled on any of these cases. What I would also say is it seems as though the schools that have self-imposed tournament bans, which I find ironic, Auburn was terrible last year, but they self-imposed the ban. It seems as though they're acting pretty confidently going forward. So like Arizona, their new coach, Tommy Lloyd, I heard an interview with him where he basically said, we're proceeding forward as if we're going to be able to play in the NCAA tournament going forward because they did self-impose a ban last year. Auburn the same. USC has already been they figured out penalties for USC. They're not going to miss the postseason tournament. So I just bring it up to say, Phil, those schools that have implemented internal punishments or whatever, they are seemingly publicly moving forward confidently as though it's behind them. Do I know that for a fact? I don't. But like I said, you have some commentary from Arizona, some commentary from, what was the other school I just said? Auburn. So I don't know. It'll be interesting, but it's incredible, man. I mean, this scandal started in 2017. We're now closing in on the start of 2022, and it's not resolved. It's unbelievable. It really is.
Real quick, AT, as we are against the break, I saw that you filled in for Chris Broussard on the Odds Couple. Love the Odds Couple. I'm going to listen to it on my way back to 901 today, but I got to know, did you start the show with the "oh yeah" like Chris Broussard did? I got to know. Did you do
when I fill in for Chris as the host, I tend to do that, and I do it really poorly on purpose. But last night Rob was in, and so Rob opens and does Rob's own spiel. But they do a great show. I love working with both those guys. They're both really, really good friends of mine. Chris was out for the night. He is really talented at what he does. He's become a really good friend of mine. So I don't mean to bury the lead and spoil the listener experience, but it was a TV theme song Thursday, and we had a lot of fun, and Rob's a trip, man. He's a real funny guy.
Oh, they seem like good people.
They're two of the nicest. Yeah, I was going to say, they're two of the nicest people you'll ever meet. Don't listen to stupid people on social media. Have a great day, guys. Thank you.
Appreciate it, AT.
Aaron Torres joining us here today. Oh, man, that's good. I like when Aaron said that he only listens to his own opinion.
We're back, and better than ever, a new web interface to start the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your #1 spot for all basketball and football action this season. Head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use our promo code BELIEVE50 to receive your bonus. That's BLEAV 50 to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, and baseball postseason, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts.